popped off, like Animal Crossing took over the world at the start of lockdown, and
released at the perfect time, right?
Yeah.
Like we couldn't go out,
time.
so
Animal Crossing started COVID-19.
Maybe that's...
Sorry, I need to take this hat off.
The hat is giving you too many bad ideas, man.
Okay.
Nintendo would do that so then they would boost sales. Bro!
Together with the anime people who produce anime to get people to watch more anime. That's why at the anime convention, Omicron spread. It all makes sense. All the dots. They all got
the first
together.
Omicron spreader was a weeb, right? Oh my God.
It all makes sense.
Please don't take us seriously. We don't.
What's up, guys? You are listening or watching to the Nii-San Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Xell and Crim. And of course, with me is Crim, the Asian Avenger.
That's me.
That's
remembered
you.
my name this week. I'm so excited. But yes, I'm excited because we've got a big episode this week, and that's the big part. Is part of the topic tonight. Don't worry. We'll elaborate on that later. But yeah, it is going to be a big one because mostly we're talking about the big three, right? The most talked about thing every era, every other year. So we had to cut into it today. But before we did that, why don't we talk about it, Xell? What is the big three?
Yeah, so the big three, I think when most people refer to it, is back in the days of Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. And it was sort of this unprecedented era of anime that set the tone, I think, for what anime fans would like for years. And I think even till now, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, it's been almost 20 years since they all started airing on Toonami and whatever. And we're still, I think, we're still affected by how important the big three was, right? They were just that dominant. And it isn't to say that Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece are the best anime ever, but there was just this period of magical time back in 2005, 2006, around that era, where they just owned the world. It felt like. And I think that's the defining characteristic of the big three. And so this episode, we're going to talk about the old big three, but also what can be maybe the new big three, which we'll get into later. Because I think now with the way things have been shaping up as of late, I feel like we could be entering that new era of generationally important anime, which is crazy to say. I think that's crazy. So yeah, let's
crazy
first...
and also indicating how old we are. It's when you watch the changing of generations, right? It's the same in sports. You watch how Tom Brady is now retired, right? So now we have seen the last of that generation, right?
Dude,
so now you're seeing the new blood.
It's crazy. Yeah, NBA too. It's going to be crazy. I keep using that word. I need a new word. When LeBron retires, right? So there are just things where the importance of certain shows or athletes or whatever that just define a generation. I think I think it's cool to see the torch being passed, and it's definitely a time for boomers to reflect on how things were. And for people who are listening to this and are relatively new to anime or just not as old as us gremlins here, it's hard to describe how it was back then, because I think also 20 years ago the world was just a very different place. So let's talk about it. The old big three. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing about this is the old big three, right? Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, all of them were kind of run on Toonami, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about this was that we, back then didn't have many ways to watch anime. There was just Toonami. And eventually that became Adult Swim. That's when you got Witch Hunter Robin, all that other stuff, right? So, but pretty much the big three was so prominent because I think it was just this kind of like Saturday cartoons for us, right? And it was always held like right after school or something like that. And I remember like running home. It's like friends today or going to watch anime. And maybe if we're lucky and my friends let me over, or, you know, their parents let each other over, yada, 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 we can watch it at their place, right? But that was huge. And so like the big three is big in important more than anything else, because it's also like a reflection on like culture at the time too, I think, and like how big anime was. Like we're mainstream now, right? Like anime is mainstream now, like 100%. And that, like with what Demon Slayer dominating the box offices, Jujutsu Kaisen, the movie dominating Japan's box office and not even released here yet stateside. Like holy cow, we are mainstream, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I won't lie to you.
Yeah, the world has changed. I mean, you know, to speak to when this stuff was happening, because, yeah, like Bleach started on Toonami in 2006. Naruto started airing in 2005. The 4Kids Fox version of One Piece started in 2004. At this time, I mean, the internet was for sure a thing, but, like, it wasn't the way it is today where things are so accessible, right? Like, you couldn't... I don't remember a time where I watched an anime movie in theaters, you know, like that feels unprecedented. And I think the big thing is that since TV was still the like dominant way people like publishers were pushing out content, you know, that meant that there was this kind of like, it's almost like this anime singularity that happened back in those days.
Singularity project.
Yeah. It all got channeled into this like thing that we all participated in the medium of like Toonami and TV. And I think that was a crazy place to be in if you compare it to today, where like nowadays everything is available, but you can watch it like pretty much however way you want. You can watch, you know, there's Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu, Netflix. There are like so many ways that you can mix and watch different anime. But back then it was not like that. And pirating was certainly big, but like it wasn't to the extent that it is today. I mean, even pirating, like the meta of pirating anime has grown so much since those days. Meta. Yeah, because, you know, back then, I mean, people still complain about the way things are subtitled now, but like legitimately back then, it was like the Wild West. You didn't know if things were going to be subtitled or not. You know, sometimes you just had some crappy quality thing. That. Where that's like Russian subtitles, and I'm like, that doesn't help me. And like, it was a complete crapshoot. More so back then than it is today. Where like nowadays, today, like when it comes to manga scans or anime subtitles, there are like legit groups that like hire people on to do these like fan subs and stuff like that. And those
which
were
is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And that hadn't really been as big, if I recall correctly. Like, it's been a while. Okay, this is legitimately like 15 years ago now. But I remember also as a kid, I'm pretty sure I just wasn't like super technologically adept at that point. Like, I think like, when did Napster happen? I don't know. Anyways,
that would have been like 2000.
Around the same time, right? Yeah. So, so you know, people were downloading things, but it wasn't as consistent to watch things on there. And so now, like through Toonami, like I was saying before, it just coalesced all like every weeb in the like Western world was just watching Toonami, and Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece just were like the big ones that just kind of like took kids by storm, I think. Like I grew up watching Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece. Well, it's funny, I didn't actually get into One Piece when I was a kid, because I remember watching the 4Kids dub and being like, what is this garbage? And it wouldn't be until like years later that I would revisit One Piece and be like, oh, like this is actually incredible. But like Naruto and Bleach, oh my god, like I was so enamored by them. It like got me into other anime, and it was just like Dragon Ball Z, Bleach, and Naruto just like took over my life. And yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy to think about how important it was back then. And like, it was from that moment Because I think, let's see, when did I enter high school? I entered high school in 2000 and
You're probably the same year as me, so 5.
yeah, 2005.
We
so
graduated 09, right?
Literally, I graduated 09, so we literally are just getting into high school. So it was like in our formative years, like these animes start to take over. And like I had liked anime in middle school too, but this was like the first time where like there were like school clubs in my high school starting to form around anime. It was like this, and everyone made fun of those kids, sure.
Yeah.
But like the fact that that even existed was like a big, I don't know, for me it felt like a big cultural shift, you know, where like more people were getting into it, and like yeah, I don't know, it's so crazy.
I was a closet weeb. I never showed anything about it. I never was like, yeah, maybe. I kind of watch a little bit of like Dragon Ball and stuff, you know. As I'm like also Chobits and all this other stuff.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. In love with my like 2D girl. But anyways, like that was, it was kind of weird, right? Because we're mainstream now, so everyone talks about anime. Like you have like art, like athletes, artists, everybody like with anime on their profiles and stuff, right? So as growing up in high school, I didn't tell anybody. When I went to like my local anime conventions, I essentially looked like I was stealing something the whole time. I had a hood on, beanie, and just like, yeah, dude, this shit's sick.
But don't look at me.
Like, yeah, but you don't look at me. Don't tell anyone. So
don't
like,
ID me.
It was. Yeah, like no, you're right though. It was a huge cultural shift to watch, and I think that's why, regardless, there's a lot of people that are. Like, I think this is like kind of moving on to the next point, right? Which is like, why is this so important? Why is the big 3 important, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be because, I know everybody likes to give crap to, I don't know, My Hero when it got big, or like Demon Slayer, all this other stuff, right? Like everyone's like, oh, wait, that's one of your favorites? And like, let me show you what anime is all about. And you know what I mean? Like, I kind of find that stuff like that is kind of weird because, I think having a big 3 is good. So having like something like a My Hero, or maybe even like a Demon Slayer, any of those, right? Being popular and at the face and the front of anime is good, because that kind of just breeds and makes new weebs.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's their gateway. I mean, more weebs, less weebs, that's subjective if that's good or not. But like the thing here is, we get more of them, right? And thanks to that, I think that's a good thing. So having a big 3 is like, when you think about it, like they're like the face of anime.
Yeah.
Is what I think of. And like, it's like, oh, well, I love this anime. I love this athlete, this artist. So that gets me into that world, And I think that's why it's so important to have a big 3. And
yeah,
like as you had mentioned, like the cultural shift because of the big 3 is major. Because now we get to see more attire, more merch, more apparel. Like, you know how hard it was to find a T-shirt like that when you weren't at a convention? You know what I mean? Like if you went to a convention, sure. But now I can walk into a Hot Topic. I can walk almost into like a Walmart. Target even literally has anime
we'll have
shirts,
like My Hero Academia shirts and stuff. Yeah.
This is once again not about whether or not you like this show or anything like that, but it's what it's done for anime. And having a big 3 is important because of that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think specifically, like, because that there are 3 different shows, it's the significant part of the big 3 isn't that there's 3 of them. It's just multiple shows that are like everyone is clamoring about and talking about, and like there's just so much hubbub around it, and to have so many shows at the same time do that, it just pushes anime so far in the forefront. You can't escape people talking about Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, and Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah.
Like, if you're anywhere close to the anime demographic, people are talking about it and people are taking notice. And yeah, like you were saying, like, that stuff is a huge cultural, like, it's like a cultural phenomenon that happens when these things, when the big 3 happened. And now I feel like we might be ushering a new age of that, which is exciting to say. And I think to talk more about the big 3 and stuff, like why there hasn't been one, I think, since then, because like, obviously since 2005, there have been plenty of good shonens, right? Like My Hero Academia, sure, it hasn't been as great recently, but it's when it started off, it was a banger. And there are other shows that, like, I think take the world by storm. I think Sword Art Online is an example of that. Like, oh my God, Sword Art was everywhere for some amount of time until people got sick of it. Darling in the Franxx is like another more recent example of that, where like, dude, I mean, it was crazy to think that like the Kardashians had tweeted out an image of 02. Elon Musk tweets about Darling in the Franxx. Like, these are not just your anime influencers talking about anime stuff. It's like it's breached the greater world. However, I think the difference here compared to the big three, the OG big three, is the staying power those three shows had, right? One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. Like, they were these long form shows that had hundreds of episodes where people would watch them religiously. And I'm not going to say like all of those hundreds of episodes were straight bangers, because it certainly wasn't that way. But it wasn't the same kind of fall off that I think like, Darling in the Franxx or Sword Art Online had. And so I think it's
Darling in the Franxx was great. It ended after episode like 16, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't understand what you're talking about,
bad example. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay, all right, for sure.
But I think like having a dominant force like that for a greater amount of time definitely, I think, is so different of the OG big three than like currently. And I think in some ways, I think it's harder and harder to dub a new big three or like something on the level of the big three as we get further, because there's so much competition too. There's so many shows that like people love and that are very good, and I think it's hard for a show to be that much more dominant than every other show, right? I think even My Hero, we've kind of seen the rise and fall already of My Hero in 5 seasons, which is crazy.
I mean, we've started to see the decline in My Hero, right, towards the end of beginning of season 4, and then by now season 5. Well, it's because they just have had 2 straight seasons of not that good, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like, I mean, this is very much so kind of like wild. I mean, why the fall of some of these shows? Lots of shows came up like since then. Like, you had Black Clover on top of that. You have Hunter x Hunter. There's still like good shows, but none have been as dominant, I think, as our picks for what we think is the big three now. That was a big thing. How long they can dominate, and even after like they've ended, some of these shows are still like going on, right? I mean, or at least the hype for some of these shows are still going, even after like they've ended, in the manga and things like that, right? They're still here today. They've outlasted, and I think it took me so long to finally be to notice which one is the current big three. Yeah. Right. And now I think now safely I can say we're there. I think we're there. We finally have it. We have 3 shows that are important to what is, culture, social media, anything media. I think we're finally at that point. But before we get to that, I also do want to ask, okay, so we have the Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece, right? Mm-hmm. That was the big 3 of the mid 2000s, right? Almost that was the dawn of the big 3 there. Someone could argue somewhere along the way Fairy Tail gets thrown in there maybe, but I don't know. What do you think if before that though? What would the big 3 have been?
It's so tough because I feel like you need some kind of centralization. I think so. Going back to the characteristics of what a big 3 level anime thing, cultural event is, you need a lot of people watching this and getting into it because of these things. And on top of that, you need it so that so many people are funneled down into that show. And TBH, I don't think it was even possible in some ways before Toonami for it to have existed in the West, because I just don't think there was a way that it was published and that so many people could get into it and be accessible to it, So if you're saying just in in the East, in Japan, Korea, etc., I mean, I would say there are individual sparks of things that everyone points back to being as very important, Astro Boy, for example. I mean, that could have been maybe the big one for its time because it just sort of revolutionized what this sort of medium kind of was. You could say like maybe Akira in some ways is also on that level, maybe Ghost in the Shell, but I don't think I could point back. If I was to guess, if I was to say one that I think was somewhere around that level, it would have been like the 97 grouping of anime, which was like on Adult Swim. See, it's like kind of the same time actually as like what we're talking about. I'd have to look up the like the publishing dates for the West here, but like Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, and Outlaw Star were all shows that were animated in 97. And I think they all had very similar publication dates in the States. I think Inuyasha can also be tossed in that. It was just like the Adult Swim lineup there was like so crazy strong when we think back to it. That like it,
I mean,
I would
are
say
still iconic now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
but I think, you know, again, when I compare them to the real big three, they're just not as approachable. I think like one of the big standout things about Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece is that they all sell a fantasy that like anybody could get into, you know? And like, not saying that Trigun and Cowboy Bebop and, you know, these other shows I mentioned. Like, I
don't know if anybody could be Spike Spiegel. I can't see me being that, right? Like, so.
I just mean like it might not attract the same sort of eyes. Like kids aren't probably as interested in Spike's story as, you know, like
a ninja.
Yeah, as like a cool ninja kid who feels outcasted because of you know, XYZ reason. And there's like you know, like I probably vibe a lot more with Naruto as a kid than I did with Spike Spiegel, even if Spike Spiegel was way cooler than I'll ever be. I think that's. It's hard for me to look at a different show and be like, has it been as big as Big Three? Because I don't know. How about you? What did you think?
With anime now getting pushed to the front, right? You're seeing a lot of like a resurgence of love for some of the older shonens.
Yeah.
So like now there's like waves, like a new a wave of just like people saying, "Yo, Yu Yu Hakusho was dope." Mm-hmm. Right, and like I've loved Yu Yu Hakusho, so when I see that makes me happy to see that people are now going back and watching some of these stuff before, you know, like kind of like essentially you take a film class, well, you go back and watch the older films that have kind of led to where they are now, right?
Yeah.
Like and like that's why it's so cool to see. Like I would have to say Yu Yu Hakusho probably would have been pretty important. It's around the same time, a little before, I think. Technically, when I say before, I mean like writing wise. Like it came out Yu Yu Hakusho came out way before it aired stateside.
Like 80s, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho, technically speaking, just from, again, like a impact within animation and storytelling in shonen, I mean, that is like one of the grandfathers of all shonen, right? You know, like, yeah, so 100%.
I think it's got to be on there. And like, and also it's so cool because it's one of the shows where you see it shift tonally as a show from season 1, where it is actually a ghost detective, to full on Dragon Ball, you know, like all of this, like fist fighting, you know, dark tournament arc, all of that stuff, right? So, yeah, I think it's got to be Yu Yu Hakusho somewhere on the before the, like, you know, the Bleach and Naruto and all that stuff. So I'd say that.
But would you think it compares well to the big three, like in terms of impact?
I think,
because if you were to ask me, I think not. I think it's important for shonen, but it wasn't like
right.
But I loved Yu Yu Hakusho growing up.
No. That makes sense. That makes sense, right? Because like these shows took the world by storm, right?
Yeah.
And like Yu Yu Hakusho and all of that, I'd probably say not. Probably not. No, probably not. Because it's just getting now love again, right? Getting rediscovered now. Mm-hmm. So it really missed its time. But like with anime in the mainstream, I think like if it had come out today with updated graphics and stuff, you know, maybe
yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I think the thing that's so interesting about the big three, like Naruto, One Piece, you can argue if they are actually the best animes in that time period, even now. You know, like it's not about the quality that the anime is. They have these intangible qualities to them besides just like, oh, their writing was really good or their animation was really good for its time or whatever. It's just like somehow they just captured the imagination of like such a wide group of people. I feel like that's like something that's so crazy about it is that like, yeah, there were just better shows. Like even since then, like I can name you like literally 100 different anime that I think is better than Naruto, Bleach. I don't know about One Piece. I think One Piece is really good, but like you can name dozens and dozens of even just shonen within their genre, better shows than those. But like they didn't capture the hearts of like children all over the world the way like I think they did, and I think that's so weird. That's what makes this so like I like unpredictable when a when a thing like this can happen.
Right.
So
I mean,
I guess
yeah, it's hard to say anything has got like before, right? Had can capture the level of like hearts, like like the three we had just mentioned.
Yeah.
But even then, so now with that, that out of the way, I guess now like like you think about what so much has happened since Bleach, Naruto, and all that. And there's only 3 shows that I can think of now when I think of anime, right? So
yeah,
like
just look at the Crunchyroll awards.
I mean, yeah, just look at the Crunchyroll awards, which I guess isn't the greatest gauge for things, but yeah, like I do think that now we're finally in that era, though. We're in that era, and where things can finally have an effect on us. That wonderful like imagination trip that it takes us on. Like I think I'm excited for where anime is going because we're hitting that point now. So I guess I think we move on to the next
grand reveal.
The grand reveal. It's essentially it's just what are the current big 3?
Yeah.
What do you think are the big 3? And like for those listening and watching or however you're consuming this, let us know what you think it is if we're wrong. But like, yeah, what do you think the big 3 are?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have entered in a new era of big 3 with Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, and Attack on Titan. And I just feel like these 3 shows, I feel like could have the same sort of impact that like the previous big 3 had. And they, again, have a lot of the, I think, impact that I think I just repeated myself there, but like, they are just so talked about. They're ubiquitous. You can't go anywhere in an anime forum without someone talking about these 3 shows. And it's shown in like every discussion forum, Reddit, Crunchyroll awards, just even like my anime list, like Attack on Titan, right? By the way, this last season is almost going to unseat for the first time, I think ever, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood at the #1 spot on my anime list. That's crazy. Especially
people are pissed though. Anime boomers.
That's the thing is people are pissed, and even with people who are going to vote Brigade because it will happen. And my anime list has like said flat out that people definitely vote Brigade. Like even with that, Attack on Titan is threatening, and I think that is that says it all. In my opinion, on like how culturally impactful these just all of these shows have been. And Jujutsu Kaisen, I think, kind of gets tacked on a little bit because I think they, they're like the new kid on the block, right? We don't know how much Jujutsu Kaisen is going to keep up with Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan. Although, spoiler, I think most manga readers would think that yes, Jujutsu Kaisen will 100% be on the level of Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan.
I won't say anything, but yeah, it totally will.
Like, it totally will, right?
The characters get better as the show goes on, which is rare, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like and
so yeah, it's like I think this would be the big 3. I think we haven't had a big 3 until now, and it's these 3 shows.
I am 100% agreement. And remember, I don't actually love Attack on Titan that much. I started rewatching it again, right? And like going through it again because I'm like trying to catch up on the hype of season 4, right? But I dropped it back in season 2, and even now, starting season 3 back up, it gets a lot. But season 2 is pretty bad for me. Then season 3 is bringing it back. I can see why. And yeah, the appeal of these shows. Once again, we're not even going to talk about like, just scrap the idea of how good you like the show. Oh, that show sucks. That show's great. Same with Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer. It's been done before. Yeah. Ignoring all of that. These three are so important for anime. Just because, like, I remember I still can't get away from people cosplaying as any of the groups, like in Attack on Titan, right? Like any of the cores, and soon we're gonna probably see nothing but Jujutsu Kaisen, because I think Jujutsu Kaisen is in its part where it's got a lot of hype right now, but it's not at its full potential yet because it's not fully released, right? Like I think next year when season 2 hits, Jujutsu Kaisen will be at full power. I'm being serious. I think right now it's already very popular, but it's not at the height of excitement that it could be. And Demon Slayer is just getting better. And like, you can say what you want about the story, but what it's doing in the world of anime could be good or bad by increasing legitimately increasing how well done the animation is. Right? Like they are continuing to move the bar, which could be bad because you're like, oh, well, now when I watch anything, it's like, oh, well, it's not as grand as, Demon Slayer, right? So these three shows, though, have been extremely important because they've also been a huge part of culture. It's not like Attack on Titan is just amongst weebs. Attack on Titan is outside. Like it is full on outside. You've seen it in commercials. You've seen other like celebrities just talk about being, doing the pledge and stuff like that. You have obviously Demon Slayer. Everyone runs around as a Hashira. That you can just see the Tanjiro like kimono and right? Like nowadays when
like
you just
green
see a
black
kimono,
pattern, you're like, yeah, that's Demon Slayer.
You can't get away from it, right? Like this shows that these shows have had amazing and wonderful character design. Memorable character designs, right? They aren't flashy. They're just really well done. And the charm, I think, in the design of them are pushed by how cool the characters are, right? So they're just so memorable and they're so lovable. And I think we're finally at the point where these three shows do make me, like, I feel like a kid again, right? I want to be these characters. My imagination runs wild when I watch all of these. And the marketing, the merchandising, it's all out there.
I think it says it all when you who dropped Attack on Titan in season 2 feel the need to even catch up, right? Like it's just, I think sometimes shows just kind of take the world by storm, and it's like you get compelled. It's like almost FOMO, Right. It's a hardcore FOMO. So many people around you are talking about how good, oh my God, this episode. It reminds me of how Game of Thrones, for the seasons that it was good. I mean, it was legitimately like, if you weren't watching Game of Thrones, you like couldn't go out to dinner with people who did, because Spoilers. That's all they would talk about. It would just be so... like you're left behind and you couldn't even partake in it because if you did want to watch it, you'd be spoiled. So then you're just stuck having to hardcore catch up. And I think like each of these shows feels pretty similar in that way, that I feel like people are going to watch it because everyone's just talking about it. Everyone. And I'm excited for, in general, this like new batch of shonen, I think, because I think what sets apart these three shonen and then like shonens previously, I think, is the quality of storytelling has been high. I know people might argue that, especially on Demon Slayer, but the level of execution on like visuals and music, like that's where I think it's inarguable to say that like Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, and Jujutsu Kaisen are like presentation wise, right? They're like, I cannot imagine any other shows looking the way these do. And I know people might point to other shonens like Boruto, which has like some incredible fight scenes here and there, and some people might talk about Fate and some the other Ufotable show, that also has incredible animation. But I think the sort of like melting pot that exists in these three shows is like how great the characters are. The character designs are very pizzazzy, and like Demon Slayer especially. There's just like a presentation level that just makes it very easy to get into and enjoy, regardless of if you're trying to come away with it being like, oh, it's the best story I've ever watched or whatever. Like I don't know. Like Demon Slayer, sure, I don't know. Like, is it that deep of a story? It doesn't matter. It gets people into anime. It's so easy for anyone to watch these things because they're so striking and they just pull in eyes. They're like living clickbait, man, for anime.
Yeah.
Like they're just great.
My cousins, right? They're a little bit older, right?
Yeah.
Like one of them's like 30, 38 or something, and their partner are like 40, right? Mm-hmm. Even they watch Demon Slayer. They went out and watched the movie in theaters. like no different than like it were, and not off my recommendation. They went and watched as if it's like, oh, the new Pixar film is out.
Yeah.
Like, so these shows are so important and so easily accessible that yes, if you want to like leverage how big your brain is because you watch some absurd or like some obscure anime, that's fine. That's great. But like that's not what you should be trying to take away from these. I think these 3 shows are important for anime because of exactly what you had mentioned, just how accessible they are, how cool they are. Like, just like they look cool, right? Like, I don't have to know anything about it, but I'll know I want to get into it just because like, yo, I don't know why, but that dude in an all black school suit with just a red, kind of like cloak or hood. Why is that badass? I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go check it out. Or what about Upside Down Kakashi? You've got Gojo who has the bandana, the gray hair, everything, and it's just like, I don't know how this dude fights because he can't see anything, but that's awesome. So is he like Daredevil or something? But no, I don't know, but he's awesome. So again, these shows are just big, and that's why I honestly think something like this hasn't been around, and I think shows like Sword Art, none of the characters stood out to me, right? When I think what I say,
you're talking
is
about
like,
the most unique character, Kirito.
Yes. Oh, joy, Kirito, right? Like, did I like season 1 of Sword Art? Sure, I like the first half, and maybe I'll even tolerate Alfheim, right? But the thing here about it is that none of those characters, I think, lived past the boom and hype wave that they had, right? Not in my eyes, at least. Mm-hmm. I think that majority Sword Art is now kind of like has fallen off, right? It's still popular, like it has its group, it's found its demographic, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not like it's bringing in tons of new ones.
Yeah.
And same could be said, like, I think My Hero now has hit a point where I think it's getting to where Sword Art is now. It's slowly trending downwards, and it's found its its demographic, and it's just gonna keep them. But these 3 shows have continued to improve, and they have continued to grow fan bases and all that stuff, and their merch just keeps getting cooler. So
yeah. I think one thing, you kind of talked about it there, is just like these shows are just universally, you can just recommend them. If someone asked me, hey, should I watch Demon Slayer? I'd be like, yeah, just do it. You might not think that it's the best thing ever, but it's good. You're gonna have fun watching it, and for some of these other shows like that don't kind of hit that big 3 mark, you gotta go in with some question marks. Like, oh, should I watch Sword Art Online? Yeah, it starts good, but then there gets like this part where like the girl kind of gets like kind of licked in the face, and and then like, you have to like explain yourself like, oh, it's good, but like you don't have to do that with, I think, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, and Attack on Titan. I think, genuinely, you can very simply go, Attack on Titan is about a bunch of people trying to survive bigger dudes who want to eat them. Boom, I'm sold. Jujutsu Kaisen, it's about some people who like work against curses and shit. They're like ghost busting, and they do like Dragon Ball moves. It's sick. Demon Slayer, it's like a bunch of dudes with swords. Moves. Yeah, like it's just sick. Just watch it. It's so easy to recommend these shows, and they're just so universally positively talked about. Sure, nitpicks aside, but like I don't think anyone reasonable can nitpick any of these shows to a point where you're like, oh, it's not worth watching. And like, I think that's like the big thing is like they are just so universally acclaimed by weebs and non-weebs that like like word about these shows spread like wildfire. And I think on top of that, we're getting to a point now where like more shonen might be coming out at the level of this, right? Like with rumors of Chainsaw Man coming out too. Like we might even see like a big 4, which I think would be crazy to think about.
Big 3.5.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Like it's crazy to think about. And I think the other thing that I think that's really noteworthy about this current big 3 that we're talking about is the maturity level of these shows. I think is much higher than what we saw with Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. And I'm not going to say that like those old shows weren't mature in their own ways, but
you've seen Demon Slayer. Come on.
right?
Like
It's
dark. There's things there, right? And it's pretty dark. Like Jujutsu Kaisen has its lighthearted moments, pretty dark. Obviously, Attack on Titan, I don't think is a show that I would even think about. Like, oh wow, all the politics, all this other stuff, right? As a kid, you know what I mean? Like, and all of that is super, super dark, and I think it's got some lasting value because of that. It's perfectly appealed to a wide age group, right? A wide amount. So you have the younger generation of weebs. You have the the middle-aged weebs, and then you have like the elder weebs, right? And there's something for everybody. And as funny as it sounds, Xell actually nails it on the point. And the reason why these shows are so significant is that it's just like, can you safely say that you would not recommend these, right? Like these are enjoyable. Like to a new person, what would you recommend them? These are perfect to recommend. And it's like that weird thing about like how they say like love in a relationship, right? Like you want to marry somebody that you can tolerate. You know what I mean? Like it sounds...
Wow, that's very...
it sounds bad, right? But yeah, I know it sounds bad when it leaves the mouth, but when you think about it, right? Like you're going to... There's lots and lots of anime out there. Lots of things are bad. And you just want to recommend something that a good amount of people can watch.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like they'll enjoy it. It could go either way, but a majority of the times it's probably pretty good.
Yeah. I think, you talking about like the fact that it appeals to a wide group. I think the other thing too is that the people who watch the old big three are watching the current big three, right? Like you and I are
probably
watching these shows
the whole way through.
Yeah, well, Naruto was better. I don't know, me and Bleach.
Dude, I love One Piece. I love Naruto. But when I watch these shows, it makes me feel like the kid who was watching Naruto back in those days. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
When I saw...
Why cut yourself off from stuff like that?
Yeah. Like
thing, right?
for us, it's like a repeating the generation. And I think the new generation of high school kids who are watching these things, like they're going to be excited about it and they're talking about it. And they, 15 years from now are going to be in our seats looking back at this old generation of anime. And I think like this is such a cool moment where like so infrequently are there cultural events like this where like again it just coalesces so many different people into like a single unit for this like small snapshot in time. And I think that's so exciting, as somebody who
really
loves this.
is. It's the beauty of like, oh my God, the two ships passing, but right before they do, they lock eyes, and it's just like, that is one of the most beautiful moments. And there's this weird elitism that can sometimes be surrounded with anime, but I love when you can see the passing of the torches, when you can see the new, like that love for anime like spark in a new person's eyes, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, they're hooked. Welcome, weeb. You know what I mean? Like that is one of the coolest things in the world, and these shows excel at that.
100%. I think it's just exciting, man. Like when I just think of just people I know who have stopped watching anime for various reasons, and then like they heard about this stuff and now they want to get back into it, and I think we just live in a really exciting time, for anime, because I think for a long time people sort of grew out of anime in a lot of ways, because like nowadays your time is so precious, and like there's so many ways to spend your time. Why watch anime? And suddenly you have these shows that are just bangers come out and capture the world like this. It's just a very cool moment, and I think this is just a really special thing to see how crazy like hype has been for Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, and Attack on Titan. And so I'm so excited to watch the rest of Attack on Titan, even if it ends up being not a great ending. Just like seeing the discussion threads week after week, the Twitter threads of people trying to like, go back and decipher all of Isayama's writing and like little like breadcrumbs he's left behind to lead up to the story. Like all that's been sick. Demon Slayer, I just see literally the same clip over and over again, and I watch them every time because they're so beautiful to look at.
Right.
And then the Jujutsu Kaisen movie's coming out soon, and I'm so excited.
Issue 0 is so good, and it's based off that. Like, oh my God, I'm in love with that. And I think the most the like one thing that you had mentioned is just like there's a lot of media, right? There's a lot of media. There's a lot of like content out there. There's so many animes that come out every season. Think about it now. I think would you say the general overall quality of anime is like pretty average right now, right? Like, but like it's pretty decent. It's not like as bad as what used to be.
Yeah.
I would say that back in the day, like the average anime, I would say was probably a miss. Right. Mm-hmm. There were good ones. There obviously, but the ones that were good are iconic. But like for the most part, you know, they were kind of misses. But these three in a world where there's so much anime, there's so much media going on. These three still cut through all of that noise.
Yeah,
and so it did something right. Say what you will about the series, you may not like it, but it did something right. And this is why it's just so cool to see.
Yeah, I almost wonder if like. Part of it is that we've kind of hit a slow season for like blockbuster movies, like just standard TV shows too. I like haven't heard as much people talk about any like one show the way people used to talk about like, I don't know, Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones. Yeah. And even Marvel movies in some ways, like it hasn't taken over the universe the same way like it has in years previous. So I wonder how much that kind of like
could you get away from Spider-Man?
I mean, that's true, dude. Spider-Man,
right?
Really
like
good.
Marvel's,
but like there was like Eternals
hold.
and Black Widow. There was like a couple movies back to back that like people weren't as hyped on. I wonder if that
was generally because Marvel had a slow season there.
Yeah,
Marvel just like pushed things back, COVID, yada yada yada.
Yeah, and I wonder if that just like let anime kind of sneak in there into more people's lives a little bit, you know? Like I don't know.
Take
that's
that W.
Full tinfoil hat, but like it's just funny, I think, just seeing how much anime is just like blowing up on social media and stuff. So
yeah,
that's
and that's not a tinfoil hat thing. I think that's real.
Yeah.
More. I mean, obviously, this could be my tinfoil hat, but like, I think we can confirm it's real because we have two tinfoil hats. But I do think that there were like right in the pandemic, right? Like when everything got locked down, it was hard to continue production on tons of things, right? Marvel had to halt a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. So many reshoots, things had to get redone because we couldn't do it because certain people there, we can't have that many people on set, so we had to do so many things differently. But luckily, and like even anime, the world was hit by delays, right? So we were locked in, and the only thing going to the movies, there's something about going to the movies, like watching a Marvel movie, you go to the theater, right? You already knew you had to go see it in theaters. But something about watching anime, you're okay with watching at home, right? And at home, and you're at the comfort of your own space. So while there was nothing big going on cinematically, naturally we'd all have our eyes on like Demon Slayer, which I think season 1 aired in 2018.
Okay, let me.
Demon Slayer I think aired like in 2019 or April 6th, 2019. Wow, that was right. Like it went right into I think pretty much lockdown, right? And it was really good. It was all like like anyone could watch. And then Jujutsu Kaisen came out in the midst of all of that, like in the heart of it, like in 2020. Mm-hmm. And like these shows were all anyone could watch. So maybe that really helped. Like cement them, right? They became pop culture because that's all we had in those times off.
Yeah, I mean, like literally some games popped off, like Animal Crossing took over the world at the start of lockdown, and
released at the perfect time, right?
Yeah.
Like we couldn't go out, time. So
Animal Crossing started COVID-19.
Maybe that's...
Sorry, I need to take this hat off.
The hat is giving you too many bad ideas, man.
Okay.
Nintendo would do that so then they would boost sales. Bro!
Together with the anime people who produce anime to get people to watch more anime. That's why at the anime convention, Omicron spread. It all makes sense. All the dots. They all got
the first
together.
Omicron spreader was a weeb, right? Oh my god!
It all makes sense.
please don't take us seriously. We don't. I just want you all to know we're not that far off
Or
the deep end
are
yet.
we?
At least on camera, we're not.
We'll talk about this later, Crim.
Yeah, we'll talk. But seriously, good theory though. Good
We
theory.
don't want the overlords listening in on this
We
conversation.
don't
so.
want the normies.
The quest to convert normies. It all started with COVID-19. Okay, well,
Charlie Day, like like bored. But yeah, so theories aside, I think that a lot of it was because our time off. So just like Animal Crossing. So that maybe I wonder now how much of that could be possible, right? Like that's what cemented themselves as pop culture. So
yeah.
but I guess, with that, all of that being discussed, there is a few other things. Like, do you see any of these shows falling off? Like, can you imagine? Okay, if Attack on Titan ends poorly, would you still cement it as a big three?
Oh man, it's like tough because I think it depends on how bad the ending is, right? If it's Darling in the Redacted level, then like I could, because it's funny, dude. Darling in the Franxx also, like we said earlier, took over the world, right?
Right.
And then in one night it just vanished. Just in thin air. Like that year in anime conventions and stuff, you would see 02 cosplayers everywhere, literally everywhere. Fan art of 02.
Everyone was 02.
And then the show ended the way it did, and just like all like it was like Doctor Stranged out of the universe, And, he's like,
he did the incantation and just erased it all from our minds.
yeah, and it just all blanketed away.
Kind of wish he would, but I mean, like, because that show, I love 02. 02 is so cool. It was such a great anime until it.
Yeah, and the thing is that Attack on Titan, if it has that level of ending, I think it's the same thing. Game of Thrones, another example of a show that was everywhere, literally everywhere. It was like you've made it when there's like a Game of Thrones Monopoly board. You know what I mean? And like again, it ended the way it ended, and poof, it just like vanished. So based on that, if it's at that level of like poor ending, yeah, I think it disqualifies itself, and then we'll see how Chainsaw Man does to replace it.
Yeah, we need a open spot has just opened in the big
It's like
three.
the Avengers or the what is the Amazon show about superheroes?
Oh, The Boys.
The Boys, yeah, when they had like an opening in the
there's a vacancy.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, it would have to be pretty catastrophic, right? Like, I mean, like, we're talking a disaster. I mean, like, one of my favorite shonens, one of my favorite shows, if not Yu Yu Hakusho, ends, the anime specifically ends kind of like you feel a little cheated, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, well, you know what? The battle between Yusuke and, the voice that I remember since forever, the battle between Yusuke and Yami never, just ended with, well, Yusuke lost, and that's it. They did it in narration, not actually on screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, you did what?
You did what?
at the same time, I still love the show. It didn't end as bad, but if it ended poorly, like Darling in the Franxx or something like that, I think would you be willing to overlook that, considering what it did for as long as it did?
Yeah, I mean,
I think even if it ends absolutely like trash, I would still say yeah.
I think yes, and we would respect the time period that it did take over the world, and I think that level of big three still might exist. But the thing too is that like I also think it's one of those things where we live in a faster era of media, and maybe just like things like this happen more frequently, but with less like length in time. You know what I mean? And like maybe Attack on Titan just outlived its thing with its ending, that type of thing. And we're like, we can respect the time that it was on the forefront, but it's time to go, Grandpa. Yeah. You had a bad ending.
Should have been, Grandpa. I was a top 3, before I ended poorly.
The thing though, in terms of continuation with the other two shows, that's where I think Demon Slayer will continue to be just like super hype.
I know it will.
And you see it
Down
in
to the-
every
down to the
discussion.
end.
Like, legitimately, every Demon Slayer manga reader is like, oh, the entertainment arc wasn't even that good in the manga. It was like, okay.
Which is wild because it tells you like that sounds negative, but it's actually a compliment.
Yeah.
Because the scaling of like how much better every character that you run into along the way is just, oh my God. And don't get me wrong though, I will credit the district, the entertainment district, because they did exactly what I love when an anime studio understands the homework assignment. They knew what they wanted out of it. They still kept it true, but they extended some scenes. Some of the fight scenes, like were like 4 panels, and just that's it. That's done. Right? Some of the characters didn't do much. They gave them more time, more scenes. I love that. Anime studios keep doing that with taste, of course. But yeah, I can tell you that if this is the reception Demon Slayer has gotten right now, we are not done. For everyone that's pissed about Demon Slayer, as they say, stay mad. Because you're going to be still pissed, actually. Because it's only going to get talked about even more as it progresses. I didn't believe it until I sat down and read it myself.
Yeah.
I didn't read the manga until the end of season 1. You know what's funny? Season 1 was actually awful. Awful. I thought it dragged. I thought it was kind of doo-doo. And if you talked about it before season 2 aired, right? I was like, if you would have talked to me, I would have been like, yeah, Demon Slayer was pretty cool. It was cool. I like Zenitsu. He's funny. But now if you talk to me after reading everything and like season 2 and whatnot, like, oh my God, it's so much better. So I can't wait to see that. And Jujutsu Kaisen, gonna be a lot more of the same. It's gonna get weirder in some parts because you're gonna be like, how does that ability work? But the best part is these shows I think we're here. I don't know about Attack on Titan because I haven't finished the manga. I dropped it, and I dropped it around the same time where the show ended for me, right? So these 3, I think no matter what, I will say Jujutsu Kaisen would be the one I would say has the most possibility of falling off in the public eye. I personally have read it, so I enjoyed it. But Attack on Titan has done so much in the amount of time that it's on there, so even if it ends like trash, it would still be a big 3 for me.
Yeah.
Now, don't let that make you think that it's like Jujutsu Kaisen is going to get bad anytime soon, because I know that crap is going to get good.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is kind of interesting because Attack on Titan is now at the end of its lifespan versus like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen. And the other thing too is like the landscape for shonen anime is pretty different, where like episodes are just or seasons, there's less seasons, you know, they don't push out as many episodes as they did for Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. Like back then you would sit hundreds of episodes in filler arcs, reruns.
Oh
like
God.
It was like a pain, but like you watched it anyways because there was nothing else on, so you just watch it. And so like, you know, that era has a different, it's just a different time period, and nowadays like things get wrapped up much quicker. It's much more to the point.
Things end.
Yeah, things actually end.
Who would have thought? Like, it's so weird to think like, yo, I'm excited that things are ending. You know, like Jujutsu Kaisen's writers, like, yeah, they pictured an ending. They know where they want to be with it.
Yeah,
so that's good, right?
Attack on Titan's ending. Demon Slayer has ended the manga. We know we're about halfway into the full length of it. So like, yeah, I think it's a different time period. And now I'm just really excited for the other shows that like are getting adapted soon that like people are also just omega excited for, like Chainsaw Man. And so
yeah. So
yeah,
that's pretty much that's a good. I think that's a good dropping off point, because you know at this point now it's all about waiting and seeing what comes out, if anything can dethrone these. But yeah, like holy cow, we've been spoiled. The last 3-4 years of anime, we've had some of, possibly people think like it's a, you know, recency kind of bias kind of thing, but like I think that some of these shows are just genuinely good.
Yeah,
like they are
100%.
some top-notch stuff. And I think that's why this feels like we're finally in the big 3, because none of those shows prior have felt like that. So my closing thoughts on this is that we're there. Enjoy it. I think the quality is like of these animes are at some of the highest it's ever been.
Yeah. Well, with that said, thanks for everyone who's been listening in on our podcast episode. Let us know what you guys think. You know, I'm genuinely curious if you guys felt like we snubbed a potential other like set of animes that could have made like an impact the way we feel about the our dubbed of current big three. But I'd be curious to hear other arguments about it and where you guys think even the current set of anime will go. So,
I mean,
thank
what
you guys,
future potential ones there could be?
Yeah, I mean, like I
remember-
said, I'm excited for Chainsaw Man. That thing looks great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
with that said, thanks y'all for listening, watching, wherever you're seeing this or listening to this. Thanks for checking in. As always, subscribe to our stuff. We have a TikTok. Crim's been working hard on the TikTok universe for
I've been
Nii-San
trying
Podcast.
to get TikToks of Xell's feet, but just won't let me. So, sorry, everyone.
That's going to be on our future Patreon goal. So
Quote it.
we'll see. Okay. Anyways, thanks
It's
you
on the
guys so
internet.
much for
It's real.
thanks you guys so much for everything, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Peace.